Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming out. We wish we didn't have to be here having this conversation. We are here this morning because President Trump and his co-president Elon Musk continue to attack programs that help people, including here in Rhode Island. We've seen just in the last few days 1,000 employees of the VA that serve veterans with benefits and health care laid off, 3,500 people at the U.S. Forest Service laid off, thousands of people at the National Institute of Health fired, including people working on research to cure cancer, and the list goes on and on. But perhaps most personal to many Rhode Islanders is what they are talking about doing in terms of cuts to education. They have talked about eliminating the Department of Education entirely. Republicans just passed a budget bill out of committee in the House that would slash $60 billion from education in order to fund tax cuts for billionaires. And those impacts are going to be felt on the ground here in Rhode Island. So I'll speak at greater length to that shortly, but I want to start by introducing the leader of our delegation in Washington, who has always been a champion for education and who is our leader in this fight to make sure that Rhode Island students do not bear the brunt of Donald Trump and Elon Musk's quest for more money for tax cuts for billionaires. And that's our leader of the delegation, Senator Jack Reed. Senator.
Thank you, Seth. Well, let me first commend Seth Magaziner for his extraordinary work. He's in the thick of it over in the House, which is a tough battle. And I want to also thank and commend all of our educational leaders here today. Thank you for what you do every day. Well, President Trump and the Republicans in Congress have declared war on public education. They're after it. President Trump has said repeatedly he wants to eliminate the Department of Education. And Project 2025, which is their game plan, laid out an attack plan to do just that, and they're implementing it. The architects of that plan are on the march. They've linked up with Elon Musk and Doge, and they're going in and pillaging the entire federal government. Indeed, while Linda McMahon was at her confirmation hearing, claiming that she would work with Congress to improve the Department of Education, Elon Musk and the Doge minions were at work, firing people, taking back grants, compromising sensitive information, and laying the groundwork to dismantle the entire agency and perhaps our entire democracy. And on Friday, the Department of Education threatened federal funding for all public schools as well as colleges and universities if they do not eliminate any program that the Trump administration considers to be DEI, and that's going to be within 14 days. So you have people here, all of our schools, higher education, secondary education, elementary education, that what do we have to get rid of? And who knows? It changes every day. And DEI is it's a slogan for get rid of what we don't like. And it could be anything. It's outrageous. Now, as a reminder, by law, the Secretary of Education may not interfere with the content that schools teach nor the academic standards they set. Guess what? They're ignoring that law. He ignores every law. And it's the courts that will decide it, and we hope the Supreme Court will stand up rather than just take a knee. Now, meanwhile, as Seth alluded to, the Republicans in Congress are putting together a budgetary blueprint that will cut trillions of dollars from the government service to American people, all to pay for taxes. If I was doing an analysis of what we could save, I would do something called a cost-benefit analysis. So I would rank the costs versus the benefits. They're just doing a cost analysis because all they want is money for the tax cut. That's all. So guess what? They fire thousands of workers at the National Nuclear Security Agency. This is the agency responsible for the readiness of our nuclear weapons, the protection of our nuclear weapons, key to our deterrence and our prevention of nuclear war. And they suddenly woke up a day later and said, oh my God, we don't have the technicians to do this anymore. We fired them. And they're trying to call them back. Just show me how much they cost and get rid of them, not what's in the best interest of this country. And, you know, what we've been told in the Senate by the Republicans is they said there's going to be a $9 trillion in cuts, domestic cuts. They don't know what they are, but it'll roll down to education, to CDC, to all the agencies that Seth spoke about. And make no mistake, it's going to hurt our kids, it's going to hurt our families. It's really going to change the dynamic of this country, and it's working people here in Rhode Island that will suffer the most because they're not going to get the tax cut. What they are going to find out is they can't feed children in the SNAP program. They can't go ahead and have their mother in a Medicaid-supported nursing home. This is really terrible. And we are determined to fight against it. And let me just for a moment tell you, in terms of education, what Rhode Island will lose. Right now, we spend $137 million to support our public schools in Rhode Island, including over $58 million for students with disabilities. I challenge any school district in this state to provide the kind of IDEA education without that federal money. So what's going to happen? These children with disabilities are going to be sort of lost in the cuts. $9.5 million for career technical schooling. That's one of the biggest issues we have. How do we get workers to electric boat? Well, we've started to invigorate our career technical training, and with federal money helps, but when that goes, sorry. $95 million they want to cut from Pell Grants. That means that working families will basically have to make a hard decision. Can we afford to send our child to school? Why not? We don't have a Pell Grant. That's what they're doing. And it's not to make this country better. It's to make Trump feel better. And that's unfortunate. Now, we all know education is the engine that drives this country, our prosperity, but also our community. This is where we learn about other people and other things. So Seth and I are here to not only send a warning, but also to tell you we're going to do everything we can to stop this. But it's going to take a gargantuan effort, and ultimately, it's going to take my colleagues on the other side, the Republicans, to wake up and say, this ain't America. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reed, for your leadership. Before I introduce our next speaker and leader who can expand more on what the impact would be to Rhode Island, I just want to take a step back here. People need to understand that without federal support, the public education system in Rhode Island would be crippled. We depend on federal funding to make sure that there are enough teachers in classrooms, to make sure that students with disabilities get the support that they need to meet their potential, to fund career and technical education programs that employers in Rhode Island depend on for a high-quality workforce, Pell Grants, which thousands of Rhode Island families depend on to be able to afford higher education. Without this federal funding, public education in Rhode Island would be irreparably harmed, which means that children in Rhode Island would be irreparably harmed. Children in Rhode Island have been through so much already. They've been through the pandemic. They've been through the school closures. Families are fighting inflation. The last thing that children in Rhode Island need is for their funding to be cut, their teachers to be laid off, their programs to be canceled, their shot at higher education to be taken off the table just because Donald Trump and Elon Musk want to pay for more tax cuts for billionaires. It's not fair to the students. Two other quick points. In addition to being wrong and cruel, the cuts that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to make to public education are illegal. Congress created the Department of Education. It exists in law. President Trump doesn't just get to eliminate a department that Congress has established under the law. As Senator Reid alluded to, President Trump is not allowed under the law to put ideological litmus tests on funding for public schools. There is no law that permits the president to say we're not going to give funding to Rhode Island schools because we don't like their curriculum. And so this action is wrong. It's also illegal. Finally, they're behaving in a way that is just totally incompetent. It is clear that Elon Musk and his army of teenage tech bros have no idea how the federal government works. They fired the people who are in charge with keeping our nuclear weapons safe, then realized they messed up and tried to rehire them but couldn't find them because their email access had been cut off. That's just incompetence. They're not even very good at what they're trying to do. I saw a report yesterday that they just canceled a program that helps high school students with disabilities transition into the workplace because that program had the word transition in the job description and they thought that it meant something else. Incompetence. So it's wrong, it's cruel, it's illegal, and it's incompetent. But as Senator Reid said, we are not going to stop fighting for Rhode Island children. And this is how it starts. It starts by getting the word out, by making sure that people understand if these cuts happen, it means fewer teachers, bigger class sizes, fewer programs, less CTE, and a less talented workforce for employers. We need to get the word out because ultimately it is going to be parents and students and teachers who are going to be the most effective voices in pushing back. So now to go into some more detail about what the specific impacts to Rhode Island would be if Donald Trump and Elon Musk succeed in shutting down the Department of Education. I want to introduce our leader for elementary and secondary education in Rhode Island, Commissioner Angelica Infante Green. Commissioner.
I want to thank you all. Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking our congressional delegation for their advocacy and support. Thank you, Senior Senator Jack Reed, and thank you, Congressman Seth Magaziner. These last few weeks have been incredibly difficult. Every day we wait for another notification. We don't know what that will be. But we're here today because many of us are unclear on what this means. We don't know what these broad orders mean, the directives coming from Washington. What does that mean? But we sit and we huddle every single day to try to make sense of the confusion that we feel. Every day we sit in our agency with RIDE to try to figure out how does this impact us? How does it impact our teachers, our students? We don't know. I have also the honor of meeting with my colleagues across the nation who are also wondering, what are we going to do? What does this mean? There's a lot of chaos and confusion. It feels like we're in the middle of a storm. But here in Rhode Island, we're in the center of that storm. We're in this tornado. We have to be calm, be direct, and really express to everyone what this means. So I want everyone to understand, about 15% of our budget comes from the federal government, which is $275 million. I want everyone to hear that. It's a lot of money, especially for Rhode Island. Among these are $65 million in Title I funding, $60 million for Individuals with Disability Act, IDEA, for our differently abled students, $48 million for school nutrition funding, and $11 million for CTE programs. Some of you might say, well, that doesn't impact my child. Well, guess what? It will impact every student in Rhode Island. We have been moving forward in Rhode Island. There was a report released last week that was just covered, that Rhode Island is the bright spot in all of New England. Rhode Island has been recovering faster than all other New England states. This proposal serves to harm our progress, our foundation for education. This foundation is extremely important for us if we want to have a robust Rhode Island. We know the importance. When you talk about Title I, you're talking about low-income students, getting additional funding, funding for teachers that help students with reading, that help students that need that extra support. When we talk about nutrition, I don't need to tell you, that is school lunch. When we're talking about CTE, we have been front and center with CTE. Making sure that our kids not only get a high school diploma, but also get a credential. That is what is going to push Rhode Island forward. So I want to be clear that this money that comes from the federal government goes directly to our school districts. So if we think we're not going to feel the impact, we're not paying attention. Because this is what's happening. We rely on the U.S. Department of Education for world-class expertise, for assistance to oversee enforcement of critical laws, and safeguards that protect our children. It is not just an agency that doles out funds. This is more than that. This is our education system being put at risk. This is not a time for us to be silent. It is not a time for us to look the other way. It is a time for us to speak up and understand, regardless of what party you are a part of, our education should be hands off, today and tomorrow. So our mission, in accordance with the state and federal laws, is to continue to make sure that all students can learn and thrive in welcoming, safe, supportive environments. We will do whatever it takes for the future the U.S. Department of Education looks like. We don't care what it looks like. But here in Rhode Island, we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep moving the agenda. Because for us, we're already on that path for success, and we're going to use every single safeguard. So please don't mess with the students of Rhode Island, because we're going to be here waiting for you. Thank you.
Of course, the Trump administration's attack on education doesn't just impact the K-12 schools in Rhode Island, it will impact higher education as well. We have two speakers here who can comment on that, and you can come up one after another. First, Higher Education Commissioner Shannon Gilkey, followed by Rhode Island College President Jack Warner.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Reid, Seth Magaziner, for gathering us here today and for your leadership. And my fellow leaders and educational advocates, what a privilege that we get to work with people up here today. You know, we live in a country of privilege when I think about higher education. We're the envy of the world, and over the last 200 years, we've built an American higher education system that other countries are trying to copy, have been for decades, trying to buy our higher education IP and install it into their country so they can do the things that we get to do. So what does American higher education get to do? Well, first, it gets to innovate. The technology that we see today playing out in our defense sector, our healthcare sector, our education system, our information technology sector, a lot of it's born out of the research and funding that we put together across our different types of institutions, our over 4,000 American higher education institutions, and we put into the world economy, not just the American economy. It also helps us live healthier lives. The research that's happening right here Brown University and the University of Rhode Island on Alzheimer's and dementia will change the world if it stays on track and the way that we treat that incurable disease right now. We also educate, higher education does. You know, in Rhode Island, I would say this all the time, trying to keep us focused on our task at hand, but 67% of jobs by 2030 will require a credential beyond high school. After the great recession in 2008, the banking crisis, as we all know it, 99% of jobs in America that were created require some credential beyond high school. Not all a four-year degree, because you don't necessarily have to have a four-year degree to get a good job, but you need something beyond high school. That intimate relationship that American higher education has with the economy is also intimately connected to the federal government. It's funding that we receive, NIH funding for healthcare research. It's Pell dollars right here, Senator Pell, passed that legislation that I took advantage of. I was a Pell kid, changed my life, higher education did, Kentucky kid, because I got access to a Pell grant that would pay and fund some of my higher education. We have to protect that intimate relationship with the federal government. Those systems that happen between the federal government and our American higher education system are critically important to educating our citizenry and innovating and keeping our workforce and the global economy moving. And so we stand in a place of privilege. The U.S. Department of Education plays a critical role in how that functions. We understand that our education system needs to matriculate students through the passage of FAFSA. And specifically, it manages federal aid for our students. It provides us insight to the levels of preparation on how much our educators, like President Warner here today, educates every day at Rhode Island College, needs to close the gap on their preparation or to accelerate them into accelerated programs to get them quicker into the Rhode Island economy. The department also has the Institute of Education Sciences and other data, housing of data and evaluation and research that really inform the practice that we do every day. With the full impact of dismantling or shuttering, the Department of Education is really unclear because sometimes you don't know how much you rely on something until you don't have it anymore. It's hard to really answer all the specific questions about what that will mean to our systems of higher education and certainly K-12 education, but they're out there and we're about to learn what it means not to have those systems if we don't protect those things. I started off with my remarks earlier. I want to send a special thank you again to our federal delegation, our governor, our General Assembly. We have a united front and certainly a strong leadership here in Rhode Island that's staying on track of these things, that's diving deep into the issues to see how it'll impact our Rhode Islanders, but also impact the rest of the country. And I just want to thank the leadership for having us here today.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for providing the overview, and let me add my thanks to you, Congressman Magaziner, for organizing this. And we can always count on our senior senator to be anywhere and everywhere in Rhode Island whenever you can be of help. So we really appreciate your advocacy and support. I also see representatives from the governor's office. We are very grateful to the governor and to all of you for your support of Rhode Island College, because we really have some good work and momentum going on here. Our enrollment is very strong. It's very strong because we practice what I would call affordable excellence. The state helps us to keep our tuition and fees relatively low, so that provides access to the widest band of Rhode Islanders to take advantage of post-secondary education. And the Hope Scholarship means that we can offer a bachelor's degree for under $25,000 so that students can graduate without debt and they can invest their new earnings to live a better life and to contribute to the economy of Rhode Island. This is what we do. Practice affordable excellence. That can be compromised by loss of federal funding. We receive about $37 million a year in federal funding that goes directly to student financial aid in the form of Pell Grants, supplemental grants, College Work-Study Program, and direct loans that allow students to attend and better their lives through the education that we offer. If that gets compromised, it directly affects the number of students who can come to our institution and take advantage of the benefits. We prepare students for a higher quality life. Commissioner Gilkey mentioned a few of the ways. They enjoy better health. They make more money. They contribute to the tax benefits of Rhode Island in significant ways. So Anything that compromises that can be really difficult for the state of Rhode Island. We receive another $45 million in federal awards so that, for example, we can contract through our Sherlock Center to provide assistance for disabled students in K-12. We receive federal grants to help some of our lower income students who have suffered from COVID learning loss, which is a real thing, to get back on track and be prepared to be successul in our enterprise. We provide workforce training in those key industries to support our key industries in Rhode Island that need a highly skilled and trained workforce. These are all the kinds of things that can be compromised when federal money gets cut and cut in significant ways. So let's stay on track. Let's keep investing in our public institutions, K-12 and higher education, to continue to support a better Rhode Island.
Before we transition to the next part of our program, just on higher education again, as the Commissioner said, our higher education system is the engine of economic growth for our country and also for our state. And the illegal cuts that the Trump administration is making impact the higher ed space in many ways. It's not just the potential cuts to the Department of Education, but as many of you have reported already, the cuts to USAID funding are causing the University of Rhode Island to lay off dozens of researchers. The proposed cuts to NIH funding will cost Brown University and URI tens of millions of dollars a year, and that is on top of whatever they have planned for the Department of Education, Pell Grants, etc. So the impact is truly, truly devastating and will ultimately hurt our ability to compete economically as a state and as a nation. Most people don't realize that a large number of public school teachers in Rhode Island have their salaries paid in part or in whole by the U.S. Department of Education through Title I. One of the many important ways that the Department of Education supports teachers and students here in Rhode Island. So next we want to move to the teacher's perspective and hear from both our host today, Mary Barden from NEA-RI, and also Mary Beth Calabro from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I invite them up now. Mary.
Good morning. Thank you to Senator Reed and to Representative Magaziner, to my education leaders, to my union colleagues, to our community allies and partners for all of your commitment to the students and educators of Rhode Island. My name is Mary Barden, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Education Association Rhode Island. We represent K-12 teachers, support staff, and higher education faculty and staff. Approximately 90% of Rhode Island students and 95% of students with disabilities learn in our public schools. Eliminating the Department of Education is equivalent to giving up on our future. Our students need more opportunities, more resources, and greater protections, not less. Let's be clear. This will have a very real impact on all students across Rhode Island, especially lower income students in rural, suburban, and urban communities. It will steal resources from our most vulnerable students, increase class sizes, cut job training programs, make higher education more expensive and out of reach for middle-class families, take away special education services for students with disabilities, and gut student civil rights protections. As I speak with educators and parents around Rhode Island, they tell me they want smaller class sizes so students get more individualized attention, nutritious meals so they can focus in class instead of going hungry, and now, more than ever, more access to mental health supports. Eliminating the Department of Education puts all these critical resources at risk. The U.S. Department of Education was founded to help realize the promise of a quality public education for all students, no matter where they live, the color of their skin, their gender identity, sexual orientation, immigration status, or how much their family makes. Proposals to eliminate or defund it will force our students in public schools to pay the cost. As a 20-year classroom teacher here in Rhode Island, I know the positive impact the Department of Education funding and programs have on all students. All students across Rhode Island benefit from these programs. Students and families receive support to attend college and vocational schools. We have Pell Grants, and as Commissioner Gilkey indicated, he was the recipient of one of those grants, as was I. And so we need to know that this will impact all of our students. There will be less options for families. Students with disabilities and their families would lose the support they need at school and at home. Cuts to after-school programs and summer programs will undo the progress educators have made, especially post-pandemic, particularly around chronic absenteeism, which I know is, something that's important to the commissioner, to the governor, and to all of us. And so we need to continue to provide those programs. More than 63,000 students in Rhode Island receive Title I funds from the Department of Education. Title I funds provide additional academic support and services like tutoring, after-school programs, teacher training. These help close achievement gaps and ensure all children receive a quality education. Rhode Island Public Schools would lose approximately $65 million in vital funding that is used to hire teachers and other support staff our students need. Losing federal dollars would further exacerbate the educator shortages plaguing Rhode Island's public schools, causing students' class sizes to balloon. Special education programs could suffer to the loss of $58 million in IDEA funding that goes to Rhode Island students. Rhode Island educators and parents expect elected officials to prioritize our students' futures and strengthen our public schools so that they remain a cornerstone of opportunity, equality, and our democracy. Public schools and the Department of Education exist because students with and without disabilities in every state and neighborhood have the right to an education that imparts academic lessons, life skills, and a lifelong love of learning. People like Linda McMahon and Donald Trump have starved our public schools of the resources students deserve for years. I can tell you, as sure as I stand here, educators, parents, our commissioners, our delegation, our community partners, we are all here to stand up, not be silent, and make sure that a handful of anti-public education politicians will not force our students to pay for tax cuts with their futures. 90% of students in America learn in a public school classroom. But I want you to think about just one student that you know and the opportunities that they deserve but will lose if the Trump administration guts public education. Thank you. And now I'll introduce my colleague and my sister in union advocacy, Mary Beth Calabro.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us, and thank you for always being on the right side of history. We appreciate your advocacy and your willingness to resist when necessary. The U.S. Department of Education is a cornerstone of our nation's commitment to equal opportunity, academic excellence, and the advancement of future generations. Any effort to dismantle or eliminate this vital institution is not only misguided, but a direct threat to the principles of equity, innovation, and national progress. I stand firm with my colleagues, both to the left and to my right, and that's not political, situational, geographic. I stand in unequivocal opposition to any proposal to close the U.S. Department of Education, as doing so would have catastrophic consequences for students, educators, and the broader American society. The American dream was started in the foundation of the Department of Education. It is instrumental in ensuring that every child, regardless of socioeconomic background, race, ability, class, sexual orientation, gender identification, will be able to receive and have access to a quality public education. It upholds and enforces civil rights protections, preventing discrimination and promoting inclusivity in schools nationwide. Without federal oversight, students in marginalized communities would face even greater disparities in resources, in teacher quality, and educational opportunities. Accountability is another function of the Department of Ed. Through research, data collection, and oversight, the agency helps to ensure that schools meet academic standards, address learning differences and diverse abilities, and continuously improve student outcomes. Without federal accountability measures, states would have free rein to set wildly different educational policies, leading to a fragmented and inequitable system where a child's education is determined more by their zip code than by their potential. Moreover, the department plays a crucial role in higher education, and as a mom of a child who's going into higher education next fall, I can see the impact already that this blanket dissemination or decimation, if you will, of the Department of Education will have on students who are going into higher education. It oversees student loans, grant programs, and millions of students, some right here, rely on financial programs such as Pell Grants to afford college and pursue their dreams. The elimination of the Department of Education would threaten these programs and make higher education more inaccessible for countless Americans and stifle our country's economic competitiveness. Education is the foundation of a thriving economy, a strong democracy, and a just society. The U.S. Department of Education is not a bureaucratic obstacle. It is a lifeline for students, families, and educators across the nation. To dismantle it would be to abandon our nation's commitment to ensuring that every American, regardless of background, has access to a quality public education. We must resist any attempt to weaken or abolish the Department of Ed. Instead, we should focus on strengthening and reforming it to better serve our students and educators for the 21st century. Our children, our communities, our nation deserve nothing less than a robust and fully supported Department of Education. Our children are counting on us to be their voice to stop this nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We've left the most important voice to close us out here in the program today. Donald Trump and Elon Musk don't have to worry about sending their kids to a great school. The billionaires that Donald Trump listens to and empowers, their kids are going to be fine. But children in Rhode Island and all across the country who depend on public education are going to be hurt by these cuts. And it's important to understand the why this is all happening. This is all happening because Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and the billionaires are trying to cut public education, cut healthcare, cut nutrition in order to pay for more tax cuts for billionaires. It is wrong, it is cruel, and the people who will be hurt the most by this are the children who are going to be impacted. So, speaking for the children of Rhode Island, I want to bring up and invite to speak Paige Clausius-Parks from Rhode Island Kids Count.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much, Congressman Magaziner, for bringing us all together today. Senator Reid, for your strong leadership. For our colleagues at RIDE and OPC, thank you for your strong commitment to kids. President Warner, thank you so much for the leadership you have shown at the University, at Rhode Island College. And to our colleagues who are educators, who are in the midst of all this uncertainty, still get up every day in their classrooms and give their best to our children. Thank you. So good morning, I am Paige Parks, Executive Director of Rhode Island Kids Count. And as many of you know, Rhode Island Kids Count, we are a statewide children's policy and advocacy organization dedicated to improving the health, safety, education, economic well-being, and development of Rhode Island's children. And we have a strong commitment to equity and eliminating disparities based on race, ethnicity, income status, disability, neighborhood, zip code, and immigration status. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization. So let me please be clear. We will work with any policymaker that works for the betterment of children and families. And my remarks this morning are not about parties. It's not about political leanings. This is about Rhode Island's children and how the impact of federal investments makes a huge difference in their educational opportunities. So the U.S. Department of Education provides federal funds needed to help Rhode Island meet its goals of every public school student having equal access to a high quality and rigorous educational opportunities from pre-K through grade 12. Funds from our local cities and towns, the state, and the federal government provide the resources we need to help achieve this goal. In October 1st of 2023, 44% of all children in Rhode Island public schools were low income. And through Title I funds, it provided additional financial support to the school districts who serve our children from low income families. These funds support extra academic support. It funds programs that are specifically designed to meet the needs of our low income children. And it affects, as you would imagine, many of our urban districts. So Providence Public Schools, before the pandemic, 12% of the district's funding came from the U.S. Department of Education. 16% of Central Falls funding, 15% of Woonsocket, and 11% of Pawtucket. But also know that this supports districts outside of our urban core. 10% of Newport's school budget is based on federal funds. 5% of Warwick, 6% of Burrillville, 6% of Westerly, 7% of West Warwick, and 8% of Tiverton. This impacts all of our school districts. The U.S. Department of Education also administers Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, Part B and C funds. So the Part B funds provides federal funding for education of children with disabilities, and Part C provides federal funds for our infants and toddlers with disabilities. Before the pandemic, this was about $46 million going just for IDEA funds. So how many kids in Rhode Island does this impact? Well, in 2023, 16% of all of our students, that's over 22,000 kids, received special education services. And for our kids receiving early intervention funded by Part C, in 2023, that was 6% of all of our kids under the age of 3 in Rhode Island. That's over 1,800 infants and toddlers. Dismantling the U.S. Department of Education will lead to fewer resources for our students with disabilities and for our infants and toddlers who have already been impacted by the pandemic and shortages in staffing. This will have our youngest children at even greater risk of falling behind their peers. The 21st Century Community Learning Center program, which is administered by the U.S. Department of Education, is the only federal funding source dedicated to exclusively supporting local after-school, before-school, and summer learning programs. These programs help to support accelerated academic recovery, students' social, emotional, and mental health, and provides a safe space for kids while their parents are working. In the fiscal year 2024, Rhode Island received $6.5 million in these funds, and it helped to provide 5,288 children and youth with a place to be after school. And the U.S. Department of Education helps get our kids into work with credentials. In 2023, the 4-year graduation rate for our CTE concentrators was 92%. That is higher than the 84% of the graduation rate for all of Rhode Island students. CTE programs work so well for so many kids. We cannot let these funds be at risk. And the U.S. Department of Education has also partnered with Rhode Island to help meet and address children's mental health needs and the mental health crisis we are experiencing here in Rhode Island. Thanks to the U.S. Department of Education funds, which went through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, or SAMHSA, Rhode Island has been able to provide mental health first aid training to students and educators throughout Rhode Island public schools. Mental Health First Aid is a groundbreaking program that helps students identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental health crises. Dismantling the U.S. Department of Education or decreasing the funds would be harmful for all of our children in Rhode Island. So you've already heard, and I will echo, we adults, we need to stand up and we need to speak out for our children and youth, for our low-income children, for our infants and toddlers, children and youth with disabilities, for our children and parents who rely on after-school programs, for our kids who are learning trades and skills to better their future, and for our kids who are helping to help their peers get through challenging mental health crises. Rhode Island Kids Count looks forward to continuing to advocate for education funding for Rhode Island students at the federal, state, and local levels. These resources are essential for ensuring that all children have access to the high-quality education they need to succeed in school, career, and in life. Thank you.
Bravo.
All right, well, we're happy to take questions if there are any.
So Linda McMahon in her confirmation hearing said that Title I funding, IDEA funding, and Pell Grants would not be cut. So you're obviously saying the opposite. Are you, just to be clear, are you saying that she lied in her confirmation hearing? And have you spoken to her directly about this?
Well, if you look at the budget that they're creating, there is no money for the program she talked about. Our committees have been directed to find billions of dollars in cuts, and that's one aspect. But I think the most important one is Donald Trump and Elon Musk are running around saying we're going to close the Department of Education. I think, I see this all the time. It's called a confirmation conversion, that you suddenly show up and disavow everything you said before to get confirmed. And then voila, after the confirmation, hey, we really can get rid of the department if we were that. So this is, I don't think she either was not knowledgeable of what the president was doing or refused to recognize.
I just add two things. First, Donald Trump and Elon Musk have been lying a lot over the last month. They said that they were not going to pardon all of the January 6th rioters. They were going to take it on a case-by-case basis. That was a lie. They pardoned all of them, including individuals who violently attacked police officers. They said that they were not going to touch the VA. They weren't going to touch veteran services. And then this past weekend, they fired 1,000 VA employees and have implemented a hiring freeze, preventing hiring people into open roles, critical roles at the VA. I sat in a Homeland Security hearing a couple weeks ago where it was promised to us that they wouldn't fire anyone at CISA, the cybersecurity agency in Homeland Security, and then they did. So that's the first point, is you cannot trust them because they have been lying to the American people every step of the way about what their intentions are. And then second, as Senator Reid said, at the same time that Elon Musk and his group of teenage hackers is running around cutting off programs that Congress appropriated money for, Republicans in Congress are working on a budget. And in the House version that passed through committee the other day, they propose a $60 billion cut to the Department of Administration. The Department of Education. $60 billion. You cannot get to $60 billion in that one agency without touching programs that directly impact students through things like Title I and IDEA. The math doesn't work.
Have either of you met with Ms. McMahon?
No, she's not within the jurisdiction of my committee. And the custom in the Senate is you meet with people on the committee and then you go to the floor for your vote. So our vote will be coming up.
There have been a lot of folks on the left and a lot who rallied in front of your office, Senator Reid, calling on the Rhode Island delegation to do more, to use more of its power as elected officials to try to stop the Trump agenda. What are you doing in Congress to try to slow these things down? And are you using, do you plan to use any procedural tools to try to gum up the works to slow this?
Well, what we want to do is draw attention to this disastrous policy and the misrepresentations of the president and others. I led the opposition to the defense secretary, Secretary Hegseth, and we claimed close. It took the Vice President of the United States to break the tie to get it confirmed. I believe it's the first or second cabinet official in many, many years that required the Vice President's vote. We sent a signal that, and in fact, some of my Republican colleagues joined me. And the only time I think that happened is with some other exceptions. We sent a signal that we expect competence, character, and commitment to the Constitution of the United States, and we're seeing very little of that in his nominee. That's one thing. The other thing we've done is we've taken time to deliberately slow down these confirmations. The director of OMB, Mr. Vogt, is completely committed to ignoring the law and doing whatever Donald Trump wants. And we took all of our 30 hours constantly on the floor of the Senate talking about the danger he will pose to our country. Not just in education, but OMB controls every aspect of funding of the federal government. And we're going to keep it up. And we're here today in that similar spirit to alert the people around what's happened and to join our colleagues who are on the front line.
And I'll just say, as far as the House of Representatives goes, our Democratic House leader, Hakeem Jeffries, talks about this effort as having three buckets: litigation, public opinion, and legislation. So on litigation, as we all know, at this point, more than 50 lawsuits have been filed against the Trump administration for their illegal actions, particularly around executive orders and illegally firing federal employees in key roles. Members of Congress, the courts have found, don't have standing to sue the executive for ignoring the law. However, once those cases reach the appellate level, members of Congress are allowed to file amicus briefs. And our leader on the Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, is leading an effort to prepare amicus briefs so that we can weigh in when those court cases proceed to the appellate level. The public opinion bucket is obviously what we're doing today. And I think in some ways that's the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal, because we need our Republican colleagues to feel the heat and to hear from their constituents that they don't want education cut, they don't want health care cut, they don't want the Veterans Administration cut, etc. And so I've been doing more social media and more press events probably in the last 3 weeks than at any point in my political career. And I think that's true with many Democrats. We're trying to do our best to raise the public alarm. And then third, on legislation, particularly in the House, the minority has limited rights. The minority party has limited rights to gum up the works. Our leadership has established a legislative strategy committee, which I am on, and we are working on some things. But primarily, what we think we can do and what we will take opportunities to do is force our Republican colleagues in the House to go on the record and to take votes up or down on whether they support some of these extreme and unwise things that the administration is doing. Because I think they're not going to like that, and they're going to say to the administration, you've got to knock some of this off because you're putting us in a tough spot as Republicans in Congress. So, recognizing the limitations of being in the minority, we do have an active effort to try to push back on all three of those fronts, and we're working hard on it.
Are you open to shutting down the government and not voting to keep the government open if they don't back up?
Let me be clear on this. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. If there is a government shutdown, it is on them. They have the power to keep the government open. If they can't, when they control the House, the Senate, and the White House, that is their shutdown. But if they want to have a negotiation with us about the budget, certainly it makes sense that we ask the question, if we pass a budget, what guarantees do we have that the White House will actually honor that budget, since they seem to be taking the position that they can just ignore any budget that Congress passes. But any decision to make a for there to be a government shutdown will be a Republican decision, since they are the ones who are in charge.
Well, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are already shutting down the government. They just shut down the parts they don't like, and they'll do that illegally. It's all against the law. So the onus, as Seth has said, is on the Republicans to stand up and to follow the law. And they're not. And that's outrageous.
Some would suggest that with the Republicans in control of all three, House, Senate, and White House, that strongly worded letters and legislation won't take you very far.
Well, you have to inform the public, as Seth pointed out. You have to rally the public. And you have to point out that it affects them directly. I thought Paige's points are excellent. This is just not about these programs in inner city schools. This touches every school district in the state. And they're struggling right now, even the wealthy ones, to find the money to keep their education system going. And when you take 6% away or 5% away, that's going to result in laid off teachers, it's going to result in poor education. And we have to get that message out. Because a lot of people just say, oh, waste, yeah, get rid of the waste. As I said before, they're not looking for waste. They're looking for money so they can give it back to the richest people in this country. And that is wrong.
Commissioner, have you heard from school districts? Are they reaching out to RIDE asking, should we repeal our DEI policies? Or have you heard of any specific district that has made changes in response to either the DEI order or the transgender athlete order?
No, not at this point. I think that we all try to huddle and figure out not at this point. What we try to do is huddle and talk about everything that's come out, as I said earlier, and we try to make sense of what it is. But I think an important point is that all this has to go through Congress. There are procedures that need to happen. Executive orders doesn't mean that we have to go and do those things right away. So we're really looking at what the impact could be, but right now we're not moving away from any of that at this point.
So are you going to ignore the 14-day threat that was made?
I didn't say I was going to ignore anything, but I think that it is really important for us to really take a look at what that means. Because what is clear to me is that there's a lack of understanding of what DEI is. So everything under that umbrella, there's so many different things that people don't even understand. And I think we need to unpack what that means, because it even goes into mental health. It goes into different areas that I think people overlook that are really essential to our community, our kids, our educators, what we do every single day.
I know you touched on it a little bit, but can you just talk about some of the things that do fall under the DEI umbrella, just in general, that people might not think about?
Well, if you start thinking about our differently abled students, I think also fall under that, making sure that it is inclusive for everyone. When we talk about gender, when we talk about young ladies, when we talk about women, we talk about different areas that are important to all of us. I think when they are thinking about DEI, they're thinking about, race, or they're thinking about just kind of what they envision equity. Because equity is important to everyone. It should be important to everybody. It is important to every single person here in Rhode Island. So I think that it is very challenging when we start unpacking where it goes into, because we have made it sure that it is a fabric of everything that we do. And that's important for us. So when we start talking about removing DEI, we're removing the fabric of what we're standing on in our education system.
And you got a couple of numbers statewide. Could you just go over those again real quick? Was it $275 million in the budget, or would you just be able to go over those real quick?
Sure. I'll give you those. And there are many other things, because we also get SAMHSA grants. We depend on grants here in Rhode Island. So we have $48 million in food and school nutrition funding, 11 in CTE. It's $275 million, $65 million in Title I funding, $60 million for IDEA. And as a mother of a child who's autistic, this is real. My son would not have made the progress that he has made today if it wouldn't have been for those supports and the teachers and all the services that he has gotten.
And just to be clear, Senator Reid said.
Can I make a point about this DEI? It's extraordinarily subjective. It's what they want to call something that they don't like and institutions they don't like. And this 14-day letter has given them, essentially, in their minds, a opportunity to go after institutions, forget DEI, just to go after institutions because they're too woke, they're too this, they're too that, and it's very dangerous because this is so subjective. It'll be just who the president and Musk and other people don't like. And let me give you an example of the absurd lengths that they're going to. In the Department of Defense, there is a rule that no DEI. Okay? This is Black History Month. The president signed it. In the Department of Defense, they obliterated Black History Month. Said you couldn't observe it. Nothing could be done. Although the President of the United States signed a certificate saying it's Black History Month. Every year, or frequently, there is a parade in Maryland in honor of Frederick Douglass, a great American, one of the most thoughtful people of his time. And the Maryland National Guard's Army Band was ordered not to participate because it was honoring something in Black history and honoring a Black American. I want to say what this is, but it is impolite. It's wrong. Let me stop right there.
Can you just clarify, Senator Reid, you gave a number of 137 million for education, but that didn't match what the commissioner said. What was that number for?
I would defer to the commissioner
Okay.
on all numbers.
Defer to the commissioner. I'd also-
Or hey,
Yes,
if you want the right, if you want correct answer, ask two words.
That's what Steph, I think some of the programs that the commissioner mentioned, they are under threat, but they don't come through the Department of Education. Some of like the food aid comes through HHS.
I gotcha. Okay. So the 137 was maybe just the DOE.
Yeah, I refer to I would refer to the commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank.
Oh,
Yeah,
sir. We'll do two more. You certainly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you articulated a lot of points. I wanted to say that I am a vice president at Brown University. I'm a regional director for the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators. But I'm here as an individual just to say thank you to you all. You articulated what Hakeem Jeffries has articulated as three distinct buckets. And it's been my perception all along that far too often and across far too many issues, we look at what happens at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue as disconnected from what happens outside our kitchen windows. And this focus and the attention that all of you have put on this and addressing that public opinion for peace, I think is where we need to be right now because it has a direct and immediate impact on all of us. And it just scares me that there are people out here that don't recognize our children. If they don't eat at school, they're not eating. And all of the things that we just finished talking about related to what falls under the umbrella of DEI. We're talking about children on the autistic spectrum. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about the actual salaries of our teachers. And so I just wanted to say, as an individual, not representing those roles, I applaud all of you for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you very much.
Pat to close.
Pat?
Yeah, the historical note and then a quick question. First of all, the transition of NEA from a professional organization to a labor union supporting Jimmy Carter's presidential aspirations occurred largely to promote the creation of the Department of Education. And just to provide a counterpoint here, it should be noted that Albert Shanker, the legendary head of the American Federation of Teachers, as well as Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, actually opposed the creation of the Department of Education, citing loss of state and local control. I guess my question is, what would you say to constituents who have come to regard the DOE as an expensive bureaucratic monster, taking away constitutional state rights to control education locally, making a mess of programs like student loans, running programs that could easily be more efficiently run elsewhere? And I'll use the IDEA Act. Many would suggest that should be really part of Health and Human Services. Is there any program that states individually or collaboratively couldn't maintain themselves
largely funded by enormous tax savings?
Well, it would be nice if Musk and Trump went through the Department of Education and analyzed all their programs based on cost and benefit. They're not doing that. This is ideological. It's just let's get rid of it. And by the way, this Department of Education has been supported by Republicans for decades and decades and decades, and very vocally. And now suddenly they're, oh, we don't like it.
But follow up, and I appreciate your time, Senator. Couldn't the larger question be said for both sides? Why didn't, during the Biden administration, they take that surgical approach to efficiency and cost savings in the manner that some would allege that DOGE is taking a hammer to? Why didn't that happen at DOE?
Yeah, so listen, I'll just echo what Senator Reid said. If all this was Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the interns going through the federal government and coming up with a list of ideas for how to save money and presenting those ideas to the public, we would be all for that. You know, we want more efficiency in government. We want government to be run well and effectively, but that's not what they're doing. They're operating with no transparency. President Trump has exempted Elon Musk and his lackeys from FOIA laws, so we have no idea what they're doing. We know that they're operating on private email servers. We don't know what their plan is for which agency they're going to shut down today, tomorrow, who they're going to fire, who they're going to try to rehire. So they're operating with no transparency. They're also operating outside the law. The Constitution is not a suggestion. It's not optional. We all swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Donald Trump swore that oath. Elon Musk may not have sworn an oath, but Donald Trump did. And under our system of government, if Congress has appropriated funding or has created an agency like the Department of Education, the president doesn't just get to ignore that. An appropriations law is a law. When Senator Reid on the Appropriations Committee writes an appropriations bill and Congress passes it, that is a law, not a suggestion. And so again, if all this was the Trump administration coming up with ideas for how to save money and presenting those ideas to the public so that they could be vetted, that would be great. That is not what they are doing. They are operating with no transparency, no accountability, illegally, outside the Constitution, and that is not the way we do things in the United States. Look, I wish that both parties would take a more surgical approach to finding ways to make government more effective and more efficient, but this is not the way to do it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.